Hello, everyone. Good morning in Kamloops to Secwepemc in Secwepemc Uluk. I'm so happy to join everyone today in the land that is today known as Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada. And I know people are all over the place. And if you'd like to do a land acknowledgement, that would be amazing. And so I want to acknowledge that I am sitting here in the unceded, never surrendered, looking out my window and looking at beautiful mountains, the stolen lands of the Secwepemc peoples in Secwepemc Uluk, and very happy to be here and to join today in our first session of 2026 here in February, still February 27, and just expressing so much gratefulness for these beautiful healing lands and reminding us that our work in these sessions with this group in the book that we're putting together, always remembering the colonial violence within which we still live today. So important to acknowledge that and to say that this is also part of acknowledging territory and just reinforcing our commitment to decolonizing our work, ourselves, our bodies, our institutions, and everything we do. So, thank you so much for joining today. And seminar today is a joint effort, relational effort, I should say, with Alison Starkey is our leader in this project. And also Christopher Powell and myself have joined in this project as well, and hoping that many others will join as well. We'll have a roundtable in the Canadian Sociological Association conference coming up in June. All right, so I would like Alison to take it away and start off by introducing yourself, Alison, and maybe Chris, would you like to introduce yourself as well? And so we take off.
Chris, why don't you introduce yourself first?
I was going to say that because then you can just get started.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, and great to see some faces that I don't know that I've seen before, or if I have, I apologize. But it's great to see you all here. My name is Christopher Powell. I'm on the treaty lands actually of the Haudenosaunee and the Mississaugas of the Credit Nation in the city that's now called Toronto. Um, and I'm a associate professor in sociology at Toronto Metropolitan University. And I won't say too much. I'm just very pleased to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
So my name is Alison Starkey. I am a master's student at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto here in Toronto with Chris. And this whole venture project started with Monica and Chris's call for topic ideas for the ISRR. And I was thinking, oh, a journal club would be kind of neat because, like, every single talk that I've gone to, I've like, oh, I wonder what this person would think about this paper that I've read, kind of thing. And then I thought, oh, well, people aren't going to really want to do that because that's like more work, and everybody's, just swimming in work right now. I thought, so what would be something that could be like a resource that would promote that kind of cross-pollination and maybe those discussions, but um, reduce the workload and that people could engage with it depending on their capacity, depending on the time frames that they have and stuff like that. So I came up with this idea for a resource that we could use and share in some capacity. And I started writing about it in a Word document to Chris and Monica as just like a throw off thing for the ISRR. And it became this big, long, rambly email with like subheadings and topics and a survey and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I sent it off to them thinking, oh, they're never going to go for this. Never in a million years are they going to go for this. But part of what started it was also for me, I stumbled into the sociology, relational sociology research cluster 2 years ago at the Canadian Sociological Association, and thought, oh, this is really cool, and this could really help forward my thinking for my research and all this kind of stuff. So I started delving into, well, what is relational sociology? And this is what I came up with. It was just like, oh my gosh, it's just like it's everywhere and everything. And there's just so much. And I just did not know where to begin. I didn't even know how to enter. And I felt like I was just sort of like circling around the outside of it and not really getting to the heart of it. So I started getting more into the weeds of things, and that wasn't very helpful for me. And so I started going to more talks and, I put in abstracts last year to the CSA and things like that. And during the process of coming up with my own land acknowledgement for some of the presentations that I've been given, I got thinking about this whole land acknowledgement thing and you know, started moving back and forth between like the actual forests and rivers of the land acknowledgements to this landscape of ideas, including the more than human, that I was trying to wrap my head around. So we talked about, Monica, did you want to say a little bit more about the including the more than human?
Sorry, I had muted myself. Yes, definitely. I was just wanted to point to that expression more than human, which in our westernized colonial ways of thinking, we talk about nature as if it's something separate from ourselves. But really, we are made of nature. We ourselves are organic matter. Our bodies and everything we do moves in uh, relationality with the more than human. And the colonial ways of thinking kind of make us forget about that. And this is also part of um, the way in which sociology and the social sciences in general think about it. With when we think about relationality, we think about people. It's very um, human centered. And so I just wanted to bring in a note and remind us that whenever we speak about relationality, especially radical relationism, we are talking about, yes, human relations, but also all the relations that indigenous ways of thinking refer to in our relationality with nature. And so this expression more than human comes from Abraham, The Spell of the Sensuous, when he says, we are human and more than human, but that more than human is that natural environment, but it's not separate from human. So this is why that expression more than human. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I guess this bouncing back and forth between like the materiality of the land acknowledgements and like the immateriality or the materiality of ideas, landscape of ideas. I study workplace violence in healthcare institutions. And so a lot of what I do to sort of like keep my bucket filled up is I do a lot of reading about the environment and other ways of knowing and things like that. And in thinking about this relational turn that's referred to in sociology. I am not a trained sociologist. My first degree was many years ago in physical anthropology and bones and forensics, and I worked in immunology labs for many years. Um, so I have done a lot of unlearning and learning and relearning and unlearning again and so trying to understand the arc of sociological thinking when people refer to this relational turn from my vantage point of inexperience, it seems like relationalism is everywhere and that everyone does it, but nobody really they define it but not define it. It's sort of this nebulous, amorphous thing. And because of the type of research I do, but also I see it in relational sociology and relationalism in general, there's a lot of siloing between disciplines. But as somebody who works in healthcare where we always have to talk to other people and we have to like collaborate and things like that, with different specialties and different knowledges and things like that, those connections and those bringing together those knowledges can often produce and provide for different perspectives, and lots of exciting things can come out of it. So this project is a way to build those connections, and also like connect ecosystems of thinking, as Chris likes to say. He might talk about that in the next slide. But also in the whole, like as a student and trying to like enact relationalism, like what does it mean? Like it's one thing to be a relationalist and think relationally, but what does it mean to actually do relationalism and apply it in your everyday work? And not just through the research, but in and how you do that work. So this project is also an effort to not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk, with respect to relationalism, and try to figure out maybe what that means, because there seems to be a lot of debate out there too with respect to what that means. And part of that is like looking at where relationalism has been and where it's maybe going. The other part of it is, something that one of the first talks that I heard was one given by Monica, and she talked about this, prevailing individualism that we have in our Western culture. And I was thinking like this idea of community and connection and relationality is not a new thing. It's a very old idea. And this may be an effort to also resurface the idea that community and relationalism is actually a very old idea. So redirecting, reconsidering narratives, maybe drawing attention to old and new ideas, is part of this project. So here the Chris wanted to jump in and have a conversation about meaning. So Chris, do you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks. I was really excited by Allison's project, her idea for like connecting all of these different ecosystems of relational discourse and thought and practice, because um, it's an inherently relational thing to do, um, and I approach it among other things in from a sociology of knowledge perspective, and in what I've studied in that area. One of the things we see around like the European and Eurocentric and sort of settler colonial ways of conceptualizing meaning is this longstanding practice of essentialism, and going all the way back to like Plato, for instance, in the Republic. You can see Plato asking the question of what is justice, and his way of answering that question is to try to define some sort of universal ahistorical essence of what that concept means, and um, that essence serves as the kind of absolute list of qualities that characterize something. So if you have a category, if it meets all of these qualities, then if an object meets all these qualities, it belongs in that category, and if not, then it doesn't. And one of the things about essences and the reasons that they're so politically powerful is that they institute a hierarchy. If you control the essence, the definition of the essence of something, then you control the way that that word is used and all the meanings that spring from it. And we see this reflected in the structure of academic knowledge production, where theorists set themselves up as philosopher kings who get to define the essence of some area of objective of study. And so, as relationists who are trying to work in egalitarian and decolonial ways, we want to shift the way we think about meanings, because these are like really deep habits that will then shape our practice with each other. If we were to try to define relationism in an essentialist way, right, we would try to specify some particular set of qualities that say make something relational or make thought relational. And that would kind of repeat this pattern. So Allison's project excited me because it fits with a more networked idea. The graphic that you've got on the screen is illustrating Wittgenstein's notion of a family resemblance, which takes us a little closer to a relational way of thinking. Wittgenstein modified the idea of essences to say like something might that the way people actually use words tends to be a little more chaotic and complex. That if we think of a category like chairs, for instance, a chair might have a bunch of attributes, but no single chair might have all of those attributes. So that there's this category of things called chairs, each of which has some of the attributes of the larger family that constitutes like chairness. And if we think about relationality the same way, um, is relational thought defined in terms of process? Is it ethically egalitarian? Is it decolonial? Is it epistemically relativist? There are all these different instances of relational thought, each of which fits like some of those criteria, but not all of them. And I wanted to sort of say all of this to say like that I think as relationists, we want to resist the urge to boil it down to one single set of common properties, but instead be open to and curious about and interested in the diverse and overlapping and entangled ways that relationality itself gets defined. And that openness is sort of consistent with our broader orientation to decolonial, like onto-epistemic pluriversality, that human beings construct worlds that are not reducible to a common essence. Um, and so does that make sense? I want to check in because I'm getting pretty abstract. Um, but yeah, this was sort of my vision of Allison's work is constructing this map of these networked, interconnected but non-identical articulations of relationality.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so what is root to canopy? Basically we're trying to create a tree or a mind map of relational thinkers and ideas showing a contemporary snapshot of what is happening in relational thinking now, as well as creating a genealogy of where we've come from. And I don't just mean in Western academic circles. I want to extend that. So this could possibly go back in time, thousands of years. Also, successors. And if you look at these two pictures here, where when I was bouncing back and forth between the land acknowledgements, the actuality of land acknowledgements and land and the landscape of ideas, I one of the things that I was reading at the time was about mycorrhizal networks in forests and how individual trees and or clusters of trees communicate through the soil that we can't see through fungal and rhizomes and things like that. And so like I mean, even though you see these clusters of trees and at the out in these images, they appear like they're not connected. They actually are connected. And then even within the clusters, there are like micro clusters that are they appear like they are separate from the others, but they're actually connected as well. And there's those connections extend like not just through the soil, but also through the canopy, through other insects and birds who communicate and use the canopy and things like that. So that kind of sort of fed into this idea of creating a mind map or a tree of relational thinkers and ideas to sort of see where the silos are. So like you're not just going to have like the anthropology silo and the sociology silo, but you might also have other silos that branch off of those, which might create interesting connections. Also as a means of showing like areas of growth and dearth and maybe potential avenues for how those silos might be connected and in the connecting create new ideas and new avenues for not only research but actual material gains for society, the greater good, whatever you want to call it. And then ultimately in creating this to share it. like not just within the International School of Radical Relationalists, but also within academia and even outside of academia. So the goals overall, and the reason why there's an S there and it's in brackets and there's a question mark is because like I mean we're just kind of like feeling our way forward, and trying to see like where this could take us. So like I mean these are not hard, none of this is hard and fast on or required. This is all sort of like what people's capacities are, what they're able to do. We also might become limited by the software and like the actual scaffolded structures that we have to work with to do this, right? We may need to reach out and collaborate in different ways in the future. So building a resource, creating connections, facilitating cross-pollination, not only within individual silos, but also between silos, and maybe bringing in people from outside of academia in really interesting and collaborative ways. So reminding people of old narratives that have been around for a very long time, and connecting them with these newer narratives, and using it as a way of world building or world rebuilding, sort of reminding everyone where we came from that we seem to have forgotten in the last, I don't know, 50, 100, 300 years, depending on your perspective, 400, 500 years. And then also like just sort of in the process of doing this, maybe sort of coming to a sense of what does it mean to be a relationalist and what does it mean to do relationalism? And does being a relationalist mean doing relationalism? Are they mutually exclusive? Or do they require each other? Are they necessary? And that these are all things that might come out of this that might be fruitful for people to critique or have a conversation about. Just sort of like, what does it mean to talk the talk? What does it mean to walk the walk? Bringing those two together kind of thing. So how are we going to do this? Well, this is what we've done so far. So after I got the initial, I don't want to say go ahead because they've never not said to do it, and it's not like I needed permission or anything, but Chris and Monica's support has been amazing and instrumental, and really, really generative. And every conversation that we have is like head exploding. But I did a lot of research on the initial platforms to be used and tried to figure out, okay, what is the best way forward? And this may change. Like, I mean, this is just a starting place. We may decide in the future that these aren't working for us and we need to move over to different platforms. This is just at some point kind of like a thesis. It just needs to be done. You just need to make a decision and go for the leap. So I lit upon Zotero as the citation manager. Oops, sorry. And Lit Maps, and primarily because Lit Maps has the best imaging and the best ability to, at least at this point, best ability to collaborate with people and share information. And the reason why Zotero was chosen as a citation manager is because Lit Maps specifically has the best linking with Zotero. Um, Now, just we can talk about metadata later, but with any citation manager, and any mapping effort, your maps are only as good as your metadata. And we'll get into that in a little bit, during the question period. So we developed the survey. I had the initial questions that I sent to Monica and Chris, and they were very, very rambly and very, very like geekerific. And we sort of like toned them down, shortened them, and tried to make them as easy as possible so that people could be both excited by them, find them fun, but also engage with them at whatever level they chose, whether it be a quick, 5-10 minute thing or a really deep dive where you spend, an hour or two writing to me, whatever people wanted to do. And then I did a mini trial with organizers with Chris and Monica where I got them each to send me 3 citations each. And then I input those into Zotero. And then I also asked them to pull out the most important references from within each paper. And I put those references into Zotero as well. And then I generated a lit map to see what would happen. And that's kind of where we realized the issue with the metadata. And again, I can talk about that later. But the next step as we develop sort of like the back end of dealing with Zotero and lit maps, and I was learning more about that, um, I I realized that we need to bring in more people and get more input and consultation and critique of how we were doing things. Just being very aware that we were creating a scaffolding for growth going forward and trying to build in iterative potential and trying to build in flexibility and creativity and but also not reinscribing, as Chris was talking about, hierarchies and things like that, which is very hard to do when you're already dealing with software that someone else has developed and that is based on algorithms that in some ways are required to be uh, hierarchical. Sorry, I'm just trying to see people's faces again. So then we sent, as you're aware, we sent the survey to the ISRR lists, as well as I sent it. I did recruit some panelists. I have 5 so far. I'm hoping to get a sixth person. And I've gotten 3 responses, one late last night, which was very cool. So I rapidly input what I could from his. I'm not done his submission yet. There's some research to be done, and I can talk about the survey responses in a little bit more detail later. And I input their initial results from the survey into the Cytero citation manager. So next steps are import the Zotero list into, oops, sorry, into lit maps, and then look at lit maps and see what happens. Present the results of that to you today, which is very, very preliminary results. But what I'm hoping is that once everybody fills out their surveys and we get all the results into lit maps and we you know, refine the metadata, that we'll have something that's not only clearer, but also can really create discussion. Um, at the panel, if not before. And then also going forward, next steps, we're going to be trying to do continuous input, consultation, and critique by communicating with those who run the platform. So the Litmaps people, Zotero, as well as online communities who have done similar work. Neha was really great. She sent me something that I haven't had a chance to look into yet, but I will shortly. Information and IT specialists. I was trying to recruit to the panel some people who do bibliometric analysis, but I sense that maybe it's too early days for them, but maybe I'll try to get them involved at a later date. But also more presentations like this where we can actually go into the data together, both with the Sotero citation manager as well as with Litmaps. And I have examples of each that I've taken screenshots of, but I am when we're done and we've had time for a few questions, I am going to try to get into each in real time and sort of give you a little example and show you how they're set up. And the only reason I did the screenshots was because I wanted to make sure that you could see something in case that didn't work. But anyway, so the overall process is contained in this slide, and basically the how is going from the survey data that you all provide to Zotero to Litmaps. So on the left, you see drops in a pond. So each survey that I get back is a contribution to the Zotero database, which feeds into the Litmaps. So everybody's contribution is important, even if you only send me one citation or one name of somebody that you feel is important or one comment. It will all contribute to the building of the lit maps and what results from that. So uh, so the survey questions, in case you haven't had a chance to take a look at them yet, um, there's 6 of them with 2 process related ones. And basically what I wanted this to be fun, right? Because everybody's got a lot to do. I didn't want people to like look at it and go, oh, another survey. So basically, which authors or works are fundamental to your thinking and your research regarding relational sociology and relationalism more broadly, i.e., who do you cite? Who do you feel you want to cite every time? Who is key and central to your thinking? And amongst these sources, number two, or others that were not included in your first response, are there any which you think are considered canonical and which you feel obliged to cite regardless of how interesting you do or do not find them? Now, this is no comment on Emir Baer's 1997 paper, but from what little I know of relationalism, he always seems to be central. And all the papers that I've looked at, he is always, always cited. So I'm thinking, as sort of somebody who's newer to this, that Emir Baer 1997 is one of the canonical works in relationalism. So number three, is are there any that you think are under-recognized, underappreciated, or transgressive? And the answers that I've gotten so far here have been really, really interesting and very exciting with respect to the formation of the lit maps. And then generally, how, where do relational approaches succeed and inspire you? And how, where do relational approaches need improving? So who is left out? What is left unsaid and undone? And these two questions are sort of designed for that. Where might relationalism go? And where are those areas of dearth that we maybe need to um, look at developing through creating collaboration and connection? And then number six, are there other resources or knowledges you engage with outside of academia to expand your understanding of relationalism? For example, indigenous ways of knowing, gray lit, pop culture, art, poetry, music, dance, ceremony, or something else. And the answers here have been amazing, and you'll see some of the responses at the end of the presentation. And then the process questions are, if you send me a survey and I have questions for you regarding a citation or a person that you mention, is it okay if I reach back? Because I don't want it to be onerous. I don't want to like be picky, and I don't want you to feel like you're being harassed and stuff. So if you just want to do one and done, that's totally fine. So please feel free to say no. Yes is great, but and I've had a couple of exchanges back and forth with people so far that have been so fascinating and so amazing. And I can't even like, I mean, I want to figure out a way to get those kinds of exchanges into this resources as well. And then would you like to be involved in compiling the results of the survey and constructing and analyzing the literature map from those results? And so this is a very broad question, and I'm like, I mean, it could be helping with the metadata, it could be helping analyze the lit maps, or whatever you want, or if ideas come up for you. Um, so this is what Zotero looks like. Sorry, I just want to see people again. So your drops in the bucket go into this free open resource tool to collect, manage, cite bibliographic references, PDFs, and research materials. And one of the things that I like about Zotero as well is that you can do not just academic references and citations, but you can also put in other things like artwork and things like that. It requires a little bit more work, but it is entirely doable. And one of the things that we'll go over a little bit later is tagging, which I'm hoping everybody will help out with. And this is what a Lit Maps looks like. So Lit Maps is an AI-powered web-based tool that enables visualization and discovery of academic literature through citation mapping. It generates interactive visual maps to map connections between papers, and it allows users to efficiently find relevant, foundational, or overlooked literature by mapping citation networks. So this morning I put in the person who submitted their survey last night gave me 4 or 5 citations. So I quickly put those into the Zotero thing and I generated a lit maps, and this is what came out of it. And you'll see this is not, there's like 220 or so, 215 citations that I have so far. This is not all of them. Some of them appear as isolated things. Some of them appear, so you can see down in the lower left here, um, even though I don't have most of the citations in the Zotero are done as in English. Some of them are in Spanish, some of them are in French. Um, in the metadata, this I think it's a type of Cyrillic, I'm not sure, um, came up. So I'm gonna have to do some work on that particular citation to figure out the metadata that will translate into so that we can know this person's name and connect with them at the same time preserving this metadata. So that's the metadata dive. We could literally do an entire thing on metadata, but I won't bore you with that today. Um, but some of these things in here you'll see don't have connections. But I believe that they actually do have connections and that we're just not seeing them yet because the metadata is missing. And the metadata is very much reliant on the publisher putting in all of the things. And I use that in a very generic way. So there is going to have to be some work done behind the scenes on the metadata. One of the things that I've discovered is that oftentimes citations have anywhere from 2 to 10 different versions of them, and they all contain slightly different metadata. And so sometimes or I'm going to have to work to figure out, okay, what is the most complete metadata? I might have to compile them together. So that's generally what the initial thing looks like. And I'll show you later, hopefully, but we will be able to hone in on like a single point, and we will be able to see the connections between that single citation and other works that have gone prior, like have been done prior to it, as well as successors of that work. So one of the things in doing something new is it can be challenging. And this slide, diving into discomfort, let's get grumpy, comes out of many experiences I've had in healthcare where um, worker dissatisfaction is pathologized, and where if you're feeling grumpy or not fine with something that's happening, you're the problem. You're not being a team player and all this kind of stuff. You're not being supportive and things like that. But I find that sometimes when that happens, it's a way of it's a form of recognition that there's something wrong with our process, like I use generically, right? And when I say wrong, I don't mean that in a moralistic sense, but there's something that's not working about the process for the people involved. And so looking at that and addressing it is a way to make things better and make things easier. And in my workplace, so I work in a pharmacy. I work in a retail pharmacy. We moved from a small location to a larger location, and our pharmacy, our prescription numbers like went through the roof. And we were all struggling. We were going crazy, and everybody was unhappy. Everybody was dissatisfied. Everybody wanted to quit. It was a disaster. And the management was like spinning their wheels. And as a point person dealing with patients who were ultimately suffering because of this worker dissatisfaction, I basically went around and I talked to everybody and I asked them what's working for you, what's not working for you. And getting them to admit what was not working for them was very hard to do. But when I finally did, I was able to create a map, literally a map of how our process was, what were the points of disjuncture, what were the points of friction, what were the points of discomfort. And we were able together to work out a way to make that process more seamless, or at least to recognize where there was crunchy bits, I like to call them, and have means to address those if they were unavoidable. And it really, really made a difference in patients' lives, at the end users, end recipients' lives. And so our end goal is to make this accessible to as many people as possible. So in developing this process, not just in developing like what is relationalism, but in developing this project, if there are points of friction for you, discomfort, disjuncture, or if you're just like, I don't want to do this, I want to know about it because that gives me information. It gives me information about what's working, what's not working, and then we can do a dive into why it's not working and try to figure out, is there a way that we can change how we're doing things to make it better? Because if we make it better for ourselves, then at the farther down the line when we start trying to bring in more people and start opening it up to more people, we make it better for them as well. So I just wanted in our society, in our individualistic society, we have a lot of maladaptive narratives about dissatisfaction in workplaces, and I see that in healthcare. And this dissatisfaction is described as inadequate or poor emotion regulation. And or the person has low levels of emotional intelligence or low levels of emotional competence, which are both highly problematic notions. Um, that's another talk altogether. But anyway, and there's a specific paper that I'm using here, that I've put in my resources and inspirations for this, that talks about how they show how in 12 healthcare clinics, job dissatisfaction was actually positively associated with generating quality improvement ideas. So basically, this slide is just to let you know that, and sort of prepare you that there are gonna, like, this process, there might be some times when it's going to be difficult, and that we can work through those. And working through it is all part of the process and a necessary part of the process. So just acknowledging that learning new things is hard when you're already busy, that there's the contestation, like the discomfort that we have within ourselves, but also between ourselves, is also part of creativity. So Chris, you wanted to add something at this point?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to jump in. I really appreciate you bringing this up. And a thought popped into my head that working through it, like again, normatively, we're accustomed to thinking that that means like reaching consensus. But I think it's interesting for us to think beyond consensus, that um, we're always going to have different frames, even if our frames overlap or connect. Connection is not identity. It's not sameness. So I think that it having that in mind clearly, that the goal of working through things might be kind of reaching a mutual understanding and respect, but not collapsing our different conceptual frameworks or interpretive frameworks into one another. Um, yeah, to me that's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like supporting each other and disagreeing are not mutually exclusive. We're allowed to disagree. And it's often in the disagreements where the cross-pollination and the collaboration comes, right? And it's often in the disagreements or differentiations that we come to a greater understanding of what somebody's thinking and why they're thinking it. And maybe it opens up other avenues, right? Like, who knows? So I think of conflict and contestation, as difficult as they are, but I think of them as a means of penetrating realities. And I meant to put realities in plural form, because I know that differing contexts, differing realities, and things like that. But recognizing those as well also is a form of collaboration and connection and creation of understandings, and a way of this is to supporting each other and disagreeing, not being mutually exclusive, are a way of doing relationalism in a relational way. And as Chris says, like, that's not always going to mean, like, we're not trying to create consensus here. This is relational thinking broadly imagined, right? Um, so timeframes and future directions, initially slow, as are all things in their phases, as we learn lots of new different things and learn to work together in new ways, but building up as we work out the kinks and sort of figure out, like where we can spring off from the software and where we can work around the strictures of the software and things like that, as we learn more, as we onboard more people. Because as we bring more people into it, there's also learning there, right? Because like, different people come with different ideas and also experiences. And just because you've used a citation manager doesn't mean that you know or get how Zotero works, or just because you've used mapping literature or other kinds of software. Like when Zoltan first responded to my send out of the survey, I got very excited, and I'm like, what does he mean by any of that? So I'm really interested to hear what his experience is of using these kinds of things. So eventually, again, question mark because this may remain small, it may grow. We'll see where it takes us. We'll see what the strictures are, but we're eventually going to bring in other platforms to supplement. So not just Zotero or not just lit maps, but Research Rabbit connected papers, because each one has a slightly different algorithm and produces slightly different results. And if we collate them and bring them together, we can get richer data and richer connections. Eventually also opening the Zotero to more people so that, Monica has just read a paper and she's like, oh, I want to add that to my Zotero citation list. And she goes in and she puts it in and she figures out which references within that paper are key that are not already on her list and puts those in. And the beautiful thing too is that the lit maps can be synced to Zotero. So as we add things to the Zotero citation database, it automatically updates lit maps. Also sending the Zotero out to a broader range of people. Like, I mean, wouldn't it be fascinating to have Amir Buyer if if he would do it to fill out a survey, or other key people that we determine are, relational thinkers, Also the kinds of things, because we're thinking end goal of having this open to a much broader range of people, taking your favorite articles and doing plain language summaries of them and how you use the resources and how they inspire you, things like that. Tagging, like going into say, Chris reads a paper that I put in my Zotero citation area, and he's like, I've already tagged it, but he sees other things because he comes with different experiences. So he tags it and adds things to it because all of those tags will help to enrich the citation and the connections later on. Also, maybe doing a qualitative evaluation by in vivo or some other coding tools of the survey responses. So the text part of the survey where people talk about where relationalism succeeds or inspires and where it fails or, they feel needs to be more developed. I think that would be very interesting, but I think that may be really down the road. And then the end goal, as I said before, some sort of an open public relationalism resource to link all these various silos, not only within academia, but also outside of academia, and collecting like the global north, the global south, connecting indigenous ways of thinking, not only in North America, but also in other areas of the world and things like that. So these are my image credits. I can supply those later if you like. My resources and inspirations are How Do Trees Talk with Each Other, Mycorrhizal Networks Explained, and then the Dissatisfied Creators Generating Creative Ideas Amid Negative Emotion and Health. And then, of course, all of you, because this has all come out of like viewing and participating in the Sociology Research Cluster, but also in the ISRR talks and the really super interesting conversations that I've had with Monica and Chris in developing this. And every conversation, I come out rethinking a lot of different things, which is the point, right? So again, your survey results are drops in the bucket that will contribute to the building of this mind map of relational thinkers. These are images that were supplied by two of my survey respondents. Along the bottom, you'll see a braid of sweetgrass from the Braiding Sweetgrass book. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see two paintings by Khalil Gibran, which the respondent was talking about how he thinks of relationality in the formation of these paintings and things like that. And we had a really neat conversation by email about Sufism and things like that and music. And so I'm actually looking into because I used to be really big into musical stuff a long time ago. And I always listen to music, but anyway. And then Zoltan sent his survey results last night. I'm like, aha, yay! So anyway, so just let's open it up to questions now, but I just wanted to sort of leave this imagery with you so that you could recognize that whatever contribution you decide to make in whatever capacity you have is important and meaningful and in constructing these maps, and that it's all on the table. There are no strictures on what you bring to your surveys and what you decide to put in them. And it's just a matter of me and whoever ends up helping me being creative in how to create the metadata behind these things so that they can be connected to the literature in different ways. So that's all I have to say. I do see
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so much, Alison. It's a really great way to start us off in the conversation. And also, I really appreciate now that I've seen your presentation, we've had lots of conversations, but also um, it's something to wrap our heads around. So I really appreciate that clarity. I really appreciate that openness to beyond the academic world. And I really like how you represent it here, really at the end. Very great to keep the door open to that. But additionally, the fun part, right? Because that is uh, it's essential, I think, to the things that we do and the relationality. It is, as Chris says, we're not agreeing on everything. We're all coming from different directions, different perspectives. They're all valuable, the inclusiveness. So, a highly relational project. And at this point, I would like to open the session for questions, comments, anything that may come up for you as you were following up this presentation. Um, is there anything that anyone would like to say at this point?
While you're thinking about your questions, I'll just show you the Zotero map. So this is a collective mapping of relational thinking, and you open it up, and I've got other relationalism works. So I've got book collections in here, and I've been working on putting in the Applying Relational Sociology by Paul Grave Macmillan, the Conceptualizing Relational Sociology Methodology, and looking at putting in not just the book, but also by chapters, because often people cite by chapter. And but
Alison, we're
yeah.
looking at your slides still,
Oh
and I
no,
wonder
oh
if you
no.
were meaning to change
I
to a
am.
different um,
Let me,
yeah.
yeah,
Because
let me,
Zoltan was asking about having a good look at that Zotero, sorry, at that lit maps, because it's just very small. Oh, there we
sure.
go.
There we go. Okay, so let me start again. So collective mapping of relational thinking.
Hmm.
And I've got four key areas. So other relationalism work, book collections. And within each one, I've not only done the book itself, but I've also got it in by chapter because people cite by chapter.
Hmm.
And the challenge with the lit maps is that sometimes it's just the book metadata that's in there. It's not the chapter metadata. Um, and then in conceptualizing relational sociology, so this stuff I took from the ISRR site. So it's Radical Relationalism by year. And of course, it's got Chris's book and it's got the Marchese thing. And then the relationalism in general by year. I'm not married to, quote unquote, married to these, um, uh, I guess,
Hmm.
folders. I've just done it because this is what we have so far. And if we're trying to sort of create a genealogy, then these might be useful. So there's the Emir buyer, and then you've got the as we go forward, you get more and
Hmm.
more. 2013 was a big year, 2014, 2015. So by year up until 20, well, what is it? 2023. And then the route to Canopy panel submissions, we've got myself, Chris, Io, Monica, Salman, and Zoltan. So Zoltan is not, his file isn't complete yet. But for example, Monica gave me these four. And then what we did was she went into DePelto and she looked at DePelto's references and identified key key works from DePelto's references that she thought were genealogical, that show like went back a little bit. So those are in there as well. And so I haven't done that for everybody yet, but that's been done for Chris and for Monica. Um, and so you'll see Salman's got a bunch now. So Io gave me actual citations references, whereas Salman gave me like a written dialogue. And from Salman's written dialogue, what I did was I did a search using a bunch of relational terms that I've identified, and I constructed this citation reference based on that because he didn't really give me very many reference like actual citations. And what I've done is I've sent this to him, and he and I are going to work on this and make sure that these are appropriate, that they are reflective of what he's going for when he sent the survey responses. So that's what I mean when it says send me whatever you're going to send me, and then I'll go from there. Because I know it's hard to, especially if you've been doing this work for a while, you probably have like, oh my God, like I don't know, I keep going back to Emir Bayer, but like I have 20 works from Emir Bayer that I work on. So I'm just going to put Emir Bayer. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But like, do you have three or four that are really key kind of thing? And you and I can work on that. So that's Zotero. Does anybody have any questions about the Zotero? Zoltan, did you have a question about the Zotero?
Yeah, just if you could perhaps zoom into the network structure, the graphical rendition of
The lit
these
maps.
cluster,
Okay.
the lead map, sorry,
Yeah,
the
I'll show you.
cluster-like node structure,
Mm.
Sure. Let me.
in order to see some of the names coming up, some of the paper book titles.
Sorry, am I? Hmm.
The lit map, I think, right?
Yeah, but Alison's screen is not shared at
Yeah, I've got
this
a,
moment.
yeah, just give me 1 minute. Sorry, I have way too many things open right now. Zoom, there we go. Okay, share, there we go. Content share. Okay, can you see the lit maps now?
Yeah.
And now zoom
Right,
into the cloud-like structure. Yeah.
right. So this is Amir Barry. You can see how it
Ah,
shows arrows back in time
Mm-hmm.
to some of the things that cite him or cite them, as well as going forward in time. Um, for example, and the other thing that you can do is you can just highlight this and it'll bring you to that paper. And right now there are no connections with anything. And it may be like I highly doubt that this paper has never been cited. I think what's missing is the metadata,
the metadata.
right? So that's one of the things that we have to look into is like I have to do a deeper dive into the metadata for that particular paper and that kind of thing. One
Yeah,
of
that's an enormously influential paper. So
exactly,
there
exactly,
would
right?
be many citations. Yeah.
Yeah, and was that Callan or which that
Callahan.
yeah, Callan.
Alan.
So that's one of the things that I mean when like this software is great, but it has its limitations that we have to work on. And it was designed for scientific papers that are mostly journal located in journals and that have journal metadata, whereas a lot of the work in social sciences have are journal based, but they're not necessarily like there are divisions that I've learned between global north and global south, between European and North American stuff, between the Pacific Rim, where those papers don't necessarily like you can't really find them because there aren't those metadata connections. So those are pieces of the puzzle that we have to work on that are sort of behind the scenes, the back end, and that's why I'm saying we're not ready to share this broadly yet, because until we figure out those aspects of it, basically we may just end up creating lit maps where you've got all these isolated papers that
Hmm.
are misrepresenting and misrecognizing an author's or a researcher's contribution to the field of relational thinking. So did you
Could
have
you
more?
share that with us here? And so I think, that those of us here could like poke around with it and just sort of see, get a feel for how it works. Like, is there a
Uh,
link? Is that easy to do, or is that sort of hard?
it's not hard. It's only hard because I have things in the way that I can't see the whole screen.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Maybe after the
Here we
session.
go. No, right
Oh,
here.
Yeah.
okay.
So share to email addresses and then
Okay. Or share with link
oh,
and then post it in the chat.
okay. Share with link. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be easier.
View shared link, view shared map. Oh, wait a minute. What did that just do? Sorry.
Oh, you probably need to copy that link
Yeah. Okay, copy
there.
link and learning. This is what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Alrighty.
There is a lot of work I am sensing in actually making this map functional in the way that we're thinking, right?
Hmm.
Because all the metadata and all
Hmm.
that. And it is so useful to see it here today, Allison, because we've been talking about this. And again, I've been kind of getting my head around this, but now I get it. And I think the recording of this session is going to be useful for other people
Yeah,
that we're hoping they'll join in this project.
it's not letting me paste the link, so I'm gonna have to type it in, which is very long, and my apologies. So perhaps if people want to give their thoughts on what they've seen so far while I type this in.
Oh, I could type it in if you like.
Yeah,
Well, if you can leave that on the screen for a couple minutes.
sure.
Yeah, and so are there any other questions or comments? Sultan, go ahead.
Just a quick question. My understanding is that this cloud-like uh, node concentrated structure is exactly the same as the one used in social network analysis, like Harrison White and people like that. Can you confirm
Hmm.
that there's nodes, there's links, and there's clouds, concentrations of papers, entities, uh, authors,
Uh,
papers.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know the back end algorithms that White used to do his social networking.
No, it's not. That's not even secondary, but just a basic idea. Uh, the reason I'm asking this because there's yet another geometric and tool to visualize comparable structures, to which I like to refer as correspondence analysis,
Mhm.
uh, uh, with the benefit of being able to interpret also the dimensions, whether it's 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. These are the tools that especially researchers like Pierre Boulieu like to use. So in addition to making sense of the clouds, of the concentration of the clusters of items, be it authors or papers and whatever, there's also the opportunity, and it's also a must, to make sense of the dimensions, the axes along which these
Yeah.
items are arranged. And this I find the idea intriguing, to say whether or not one would be able to come up with uh, um, general dimensions in which those relational works are arranged. That's a question I have. And maybe using the same input data that you are using, uh, it's possible to do using a different tool
Mhm.
in addition.
Right.
So three-dimensional you're thinking,
Not
or?
necessarily 3 dimensional, 2 dimensional. I can give you a snapshot of the idea I have in mind by sharing my own screen. Someone else is.
Okay. Just before we go,
Yep.
I just want to point out that the two axes on this, so the the size of the node indicates the number of
Okay.
citations.
Mhm.
And so more recently published are to the right, and the more citations something has, the higher up it is on your screen. So that's why
Oh.
Bennett is so high, is because and Callan is so high, is because they have a lot of citations, but the connections between the citations that are on the screen are not there. So this sees that that this has been cited a lot from this time frame, but it isn't necessarily connected to the papers that we have in this particular series. So a lot of
Yeah.
people have used Berger 1980, but not necessarily in the list of relational things that we have here. And one of the things that I haven't done yet is it says explore related articles up here on the left. And this is basically where it takes the metadata that we have in our list, it takes the tags that are already there, and it repopulates it. It keeps up to date on what works have been cited by cite these papers that we have, so it can create a list of successors. And it we can also set it up that it so that as works come out that are tagged or have metadata that matches up with our litmaps data, it will automatically populate and bring that in or allow us to evaluate it. And we can decide whether
Mhm.
yes, it should go in our list of relational thinking or no, it should not, kind of thing. So let me stop sharing so that you can
Yeah.
share what you wanted to share, Zoltan.
Just very quickly, yeah. Share my whole application. What do I share? Sorry, I just this one. Yeah. Can you see
Hmm.
this? Two-dimensional.
Huh.
Yeah, this is the kind of correspondence analysis I have in mind. It's still, yeah, it's from a conference paper, still unpublished, by the way. It's based on a discourse and content analysis of uh, Hungarian press. It's about a comparison of uh, discourses about migrants, Jewish
Mhm.
migrations toward the late 19th century, and Middle Eastern migration in the mid 2010s in Europe. And what I'm trying to draw your attention to is the interpretation of the dimensions here. The parallel, the axis number one, horizontal, relational as opposed to racialized terms, and the vertical one, axis number two, unintegrated and strongly integrated. Speaking of the minority groups, so this is the kind of thing I have in mind. So in addition to the two-dimensional thinking that you've been presenting, the recent or um, less recent publications and the number of citations, uh, there there could be other dimensions uh, that we can make sense that we can use to make sense of the relational works. And what I'm saying here, to put it very bluntly, that as an additional tool, not as the principal or the main tool,
Yeah. Yeah.
correspondence analysis can be handy, just
Yeah.
worth trying.
That's great, and it brings up a good point and why. Remember when I talked about bringing in other platforms like Connected Papers and Research Rabbit? So Connected Papers is, in addition to being a citational connector, it also connects ideas and tagged. It focuses on relational things. So when I put in Chris's radical proposal for radical relationalism into Connected Papers, I got this crazy cluster of ancient Egyptian journal articles. And so that might be that might speak to a little bit of what you're talking about, Zoltan, but definitely I think we should explore what you're suggesting. Um, I'm wondering, does it require in vivo or some sort of coding tool before it goes into the graph, like the
Um,
visualization?
I can answer this question upon looking at your raw data. I'm sure it's arranged in a matrix-like structure,
Hmm.
rows and columns for
Right.
the row we call the observations and columns the variables. And
Okay.
based on that, I can figure it out.
Okay. Okay. And does it require metadata or is it like how do you,
Uh, uh, it would be nice to have the metadata. Yeah.
okay. Okay. So I'll definitely share the Zotero citation map with you or citations with you. And then you can take a look at it and see if that's something that we can build up from the beginning.
But by
And
the way, I'm
something-
completely new to Zotero.
okay.
I mean, I only heard about it in your first mail a couple of weeks ago. I've been using Mendeley,
Okay.
another free tool for 16 plus years, but happy to learn.
Okay. I I've only been using EndNote for a couple of years, and I hear that citation management systems are all very similar. I don't 100% know, but EndNote seems very similar in many ways to Zotero. So I don't think that if you're using a citation management system, I don't think it will be a huge stretch. It's just a matter of if you're used to not using it and incorporating that into your process of using it. That's where the challenge is if you just haven't been using it at all. So I think that'll be fine. But are there any other questions about?
I got my hand up. I just put
Oh, sorry.
myself in the asking list. And wondering if there's any other questions. I didn't want to jump in the dialogue, which is really generative, but I wanted to basically ask with these citation apps and the maps, and perhaps it's already been answered with adding qualitative data, but how could we include the non-academic sources in the mapping or in the mapping exercise? Would it be like when you were talking about images or indigenous ways of knowing or music or paintings? What
Yeah.
what would it look like? Or maybe it's another dimension. I don't know.
Yeah, let me share my screen again. So share. So when I want to um when I want to create a thing, I just go in here and I create a new file.
Mm,
And you're kind of limited by this list, although it is quite long. But you
mm,
see how you could do video recordings, TV broadcast, thesis, a statute, let's see, a patent, a map, a manuscript. Like there's a lot of uh, a lot of different things that you can do. You can even put in emails or documents, dictionary and data sets. Like there is flexibility, and basically when for those papers that I was not able to find, like so I just did a data set. You would
mm.
have to have a title for it. You'd have to put in, like, this is metadata here. All of this information, it's blank. There's no metadata. So we would
Right,
have to put that in. And then we could write a short abstract of like why it's in there and what it's about and why we included it. We could have attachments, we could do notes. And as you can see, there's also room for tagging. And it's
right.
the tags,
Mm,
the it's the metadata and the tags for those things that sort of lie outside of the typical academic thing that we would be adding. And that's something that we would have to play with, right? That we would have to figure out. That's one of the things like for discovery. And for example, IO provided a couple of things that are of that nature. And so I just put them in for what I could find very like quick and dirty, get it done for this presentation. But one of the things that I want to work on over the next couple of months with the panel is finding a way to create that metadata, finding a way to tag it with her help, so that it pops up and can communicate and connect with other things. So
Hmm.
that's the tagging will be a big thing. And it's probably going to start with when people submit survey results. If they can look at the tags for their different citations and sort of if there's anything that they think is missing, they can add things in. Um, or if they're and sometimes we can't you can't pull things out of your head. Creativity requires, the meeting of two things. So sometimes like if I've read something of that IO has submitted and I know because of this notion or concept or feeling behind the paper that it's related to this other thing that I've read, just me knowing that can help me create a tag that could connect those papers more fully, um, which would provide for other connections in the future. So yeah, the tagging is going to be a really creative,
Hmm.
integral part of that in the process, and it'll be never ending. So
Wow.
and not
Yeah.
not not never ending in like, oh my gosh, this is never going to be done, but just never ending in that, like, I mean, you could have fun with it, right? Like there's like graphic novels and
You
like
can.
so many things that we can do with this. And at the end of the day, the more that we're able to connect these works with things outside of academia, the more we'll be able to bring people into the circle of the conversation. Because if you have a 19-year-old who's really into graphic novels and they read this graphic novel and it's on our list. And so they go into this resource, they discover our resource through engaging with this graphic novel. And then they see this connection with this graphic novel with all this other stuff. Like who knows where that might lead, right?
Mm.
So that's at the end of the day what the end goal is. Now, when that if that happens in 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. But there's a lot of steps between now and then, but that's sort of like the end goal is to show people the connections between various works across, globally and north, south, east, west, that kind of thing.
And
Right.
in doing that, like it might be less important to be comprehensive than to kind of find like connections that open things up. So like um, because there are these different kind of literatures and conversations going on in different disciplines and areas, and um, so there may be kind of a point where with a given piece of work we get like saturation, and then it's like there could be more, but it's enough to try to find those branching connections too.
Yeah, like right now we've got mostly people who are connected with sociology. So I think that's why the clusters, there's
Hmm.
no real clear clusters. But I think when we start getting people who are more into anthropology or more into international relations or more into organization and management studies, which are some of our memberships, right? I think
Mm.
we'll start seeing more clearly the different clusters and
Mm.
connections between them. So
Yeah. Oh, um, I'm glad I asked that question because I think what you answered gave more clarity into the tagging business,
mhm,
right? Because that will be part of that. And yeah, finding ways to connect with disciplines other than uh, sociology or, yeah.
mm, mhm. Yeah, because right now, if
Cool.
you look at the tagging, a lot of it is very academic and very like l- um, linguistic, right? So we need to bring in like pop culture elements and not just contemporary pop culture, but pop culture through time. References that connect music stuff with literature, with poetry, with academic work and things like that, particularly when you're looking at like Black radical thinkers and things like that. There's a huge connection between pop culture and their academic writing, as well as their philosophical writings and things like that. And so, yeah, there's lots of potential for connections here.
Right. Right. Anyone else would like to jump in, discuss? I see none right now,
Just to
but
say the
it
light, I
is,
find this work fascinating, so I'm
yeah.
intrigued. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sultan. Yes, it is. And it is still in the making. There's a lot of work that needs to go into it. Um, it may become a book chapter of the book we're working on, which is really exciting, really interesting, and we'll be seeing it come to fruition. The next session will be in the Canadian Sociological Association, but we may come back to think together relationally about this project, maybe in a future Red Radrail talk. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. All right. Well, we're close to the end of our time together today. I'm gonna stop the recording.